untouchable. He was the rare Hollywood superstar who could do it all. He could make audiences laugh, make them cry, dominate the box office, sell millions of albums, and maintain an image that felt almost impossible to damage. From the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to blockbuster franchises like Men in Black and Bad Boys, Will Smith built a career that many actors could only dream of. He wasn't just famous. He was one of the most trusted and beloved celebrities in the world. But today, many fans are asking a troubling question. What exactly is happening to Will Smith right now? The answer isn't simple. In fact, it's a story filled with controversy, public scrutiny, personal struggles, and a relentless media spotlight that refuses to move on. While Will Smith remains one of the biggest names in entertainment, the reality is that his life and career have looked very different since the shocking moment that changed everything. When Will Smith walked onto the Oscar stage in 2022 and slapped Chris Rock during a live broadcast watched around the world, the image he had spent decades building cracked almost instantly. Within minutes, social media exploded. News outlets across the globe led with the story. Millions of viewers who had admired Smith for years suddenly saw him in a completely different light. The incident became one of the most talked about moments in entertainment history, and its consequences have followed him ever since. Many expected the controversy to fade after a few months. Instead, it became a defining chapter of his public identity. Even years later, discussions about Will Smith often begin with that single moment. It no longer mattered that he had spent decades creating iconic films or inspiring audiences. For many people, the slap became the first thing that came to mind whenever his name was mentioned. But the Oscar incident was only the beginning. As Will attempted to rebuild his reputation, new controversies and rumors continued to emerge around him and those close to him. His marriage to Jada Pinkett Smith remained a constant source of headlines. For years, the couple's relationship had fascinated the public, but after numerous interviews, revelations, and discussions about their unconventional marriage, many fans began questioning what was really happening behind closed doors. Every public appearance seemed to spark another round of speculation. Every interview generated new theories. Every comment from either Will or Jada became material for endless online debates. The result was a situation where the actor appeared unable to escape the constant cycle of public examination. Meanwhile, Will was also dealing with challenges on the professional side of his career. Hollywood can be unforgiving, especially when a star's reputation becomes controversial. Studios, producers, and investors often think about risk before anything else. While Will Smith remains a bankable celebrity, questions began circulating throughout the industry about whether audiences would fully embrace him again. The uncertainty surrounding his future created an unusual situation. He wasn't disappearing from Hollywood, but he wasn't operating with the same level of confidence and momentum that had defined much of his career. Every project suddenly carried additional pressure. Every success was analyzed. Every setback was amplified. Adding to the complexity, legal disputes involving individuals connected to Will Smith have also generated media attention. Lawsuits, allegations, and public accusations have periodically surfaced, creating headlines that keep his name tied to controversy even when he is not necessarily the central figure in the dispute. In today's digital age, perception often moves faster than facts, and public opinion can shift dramatically before legal processes have reached any conclusion. At the same time, Will has been making visible efforts to move forward. One of the clearest examples has been his return to music. After spending many years focused primarily on acting, he surprised fans by returning to the recording studio and releasing new material. For some supporters, this represented a genuine attempt to reconnect with his creative roots. For critics, however, it raised questions about whether the comeback was part of a broader effort to reshape public perception. What makes the situation particularly difficult to watch is the contrast between the Will Smith people remember and the Will Smith they see today. The younger version of Smith seemed almost unstoppable. He projected confidence, positivity, and charisma wherever he went. He appeared to have mastered the delicate balance between fame and relatability. Today's version of Will Smith often appears more vulnerable. There's a sense that he is carrying the weight of years of public judgment, personal challenges, and constant scrutiny. Every statement he makes is carefully analyzed. Every appearance is dissected. Every decision becomes another topic of discussion across social media platforms and entertainment news outlets. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of this story is that Will Smith has not given up. Despite the criticism, despite the headlines, despite the endless speculation, he continues to work. He continues to create. He continues to step into the spotlight, even when he knows that millions of people are waiting to judge his every move. And that may be what makes his current situation so fascinating. This isn't the story of a celebrity who completely disappeared after a scandal. It's the story of a global superstar attempting to navigate one of the most difficult periods of his life while the entire world watches. The question now is not whether Will Smith can survive the controversy. He already has. The real question is whether he can ever reclaim the unique position he once held in popular culture. Can audiences separate the man from the mistakes? Can Hollywood fully embrace him again? Or has the image that made him one of the most beloved entertainers in history been changed forever? As more developments continue to unfold around Will Smith, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The next chapter of his story may end up being even more dramatic than everything that came before. To understand why Will Smith's current situation feels so painful to watch, we have to remember how carefully his public image was built. Will was not just another actor who became famous by accident. He was a brand, a symbol of promise. For years, audiences believed that when Will Smith appeared on screen, they were going to get energy, charm, humor, and heart. He represented a kind of old-school movie star power that Hollywood rarely produces anymore. He could lead an action film, carry a comedy, perform emotional drama, promote a soundtrack, and still walk onto a talk show looking like the most relaxed person in the room. That is why the fall felt so shocking. People were not simply reacting to one violent moment on an awards stage. They were reacting to the collapse of an image they had trusted for decades. The slap at the Oscars did not just damage Will Smith's reputation. It created a deep contradiction in the public imagination. How could the man known for positivity, discipline, and emotional intelligence suddenly lose control in front of the entire world? That question became harder to answer because it forced people to look back at everything they thought they knew about him. After the incident, Will apologized publicly and repeatedly. He resigned from the Academy and accepted the consequences placed on him. But apologies do not erase images, especially images replayed millions of times online. The moment became a meme, a debate topic, a cultural reference, and a permanent part of his biography. In the old Hollywood system, a star might have been able to disappear for a while and return after public memory cooled. But in the modern internet age, nothing truly disappears. The clip remains available. The jokes remain searchable. The reactions remain archived forever. For Will Smith, the punishment was not only institutional. It was emotional and symbolic. He won the Oscar for Best Actor that same night, the biggest artistic achievement of his career, but the victory was immediately overshadowed by the controversy. What should have been remembered as the crowning moment of his journey became inseparable from the lowest point of his public life. That irony is one of the most tragic parts of the story. After decades of chasing serious recognition as an actor, Will finally reach the mountaintop, only to have the world talk about something else. Then came the struggle to return. Hollywood loves comeback stories, but it only loves them under certain conditions. The star must show humility. The public must show signs of forgiveness. The business must still make money. And the scandal must not feel too fresh. Will Smith's problem is that his scandal remained emotionally alive because it was tied to larger conversations about masculinity, marriage, public humiliation, anger, comedy, race, celebrity privilege, and accountability. Different groups interpreted the moment in completely different ways, which made consensus almost impossible. Some defended Will, arguing that he acted out of emotional pressure and a desire to protect his wife. Others condemned him, saying that no provocation justified physical violence, especially at a professional event watched by millions. Some saw a man breaking under private pain. Others saw a star who believed he could do anything without consequences. Because the interpretations were so divided, Will could not easily control the narrative. No matter what he said afterward, a large part of the audience had already chosen its version of the story. And then there was the marriage factor. Will and Jada Pinkett Smith had already lived under intense public curiosity for years. Their relationship had become the subject of interviews, memes, confession-style conversations, and online speculation. When the Oscar incident happened, many people did not view it as an isolated event. They connected it to everything they had heard about the couple's marriage, their public discussions, their separations, their emotional complications, and their unusually open approach to personal matters. This made Will's image even more difficult to repair because the scandal was no longer just about one night. It became part of a larger story about his private life. The painful reality is that Will Smith is now famous in two different ways. He is famous for his work, and he is famous for his wounds. One version of him belongs to the audience that grew up loving his movies. The other version belongs to the internet era, where every embarrassing moment can become permanent entertainment. These two versions are constantly fighting each other. When fans remember Independence Day, The Pursuit of Happiness, I'm Legend, or Bad Boys, they see the old Will Smith. But when critics discuss his public downfall, they see the man from that Oscar stage. This split identity creates a strange tension around everything he does now. If he smiles too much, people say he is pretending nothing happened. If he appears serious, people say he looks defeated. If he talks about healing, people accuse him of managing his image. If he avoids the topic, people say he refuses accountability. It is an impossible public trap. Every path forward has a cost. Still, Will Smith continues to move. That matters. Many celebrities disappear after a scandal because the pressure becomes unbearable. Will has chosen a different route. He has tried to re-enter culture step by step through film, music, public appearances, and controlled messages of reflection. But the road back is not smooth. The audience that once welcomed him without hesitation now watches him with caution. What is happening to Will Smith right now is not simply a career crisis. It is a test of whether a modern celebrity can survive the permanent memory of the internet. In another era, time might have softened the damage. Today, time does not erase anything. It only adds new layers. Will is not just rebuilding his career. He is rebuilding trust in a world that no longer forgets. What makes Will Smith's story even harder to watch is the silence behind the spectacle. Publicly, people see red carpets, interviews, movie promotions, social media posts, and carefully prepared statements. But underneath all of that, there's a man trying to live with the consequences of one moment that millions of strangers still feel entitled to judge. Fame has always been a dangerous bargain, but in Will's case, the bargain became brutal. He gave the public decades of entertainment, laughter, motivation, and emotional performances. Then, after one explosive mistake, that same public began replaying his worst moment as if it defined his entire life. For Will, the hardest part may not be the criticism itself. He has been famous long enough to know that criticism is part of the business. The harder part is that the criticism became personal. People were no longer just reviewing his movies. They were judging his marriage, his masculinity, his emotional control, his parenting, his sincerity, and even his entire character. Suddenly, the actor who once controlled every room with charm was placed under a microscope where even his facial expressions became evidence for someone's theory. This is where the tragedy of his current situation becomes more complicated. Will Smith spent much of his career presenting himself as a man in control. He spoke often about discipline, success, fear, work ethic, and the power mindset. He built an image of someone who could overcome anything through focus and determination. But the Oscar incident exposed something more human and less polished.